For the first video in the Veals Mail Order A to Z series, we've enlisted the help of fishery scientist Dr. Mike Ladle. A lifelong angler and authority on the biology of sea fish, Mike is a regular contributor to the Sea Angler magazine and has written a number of books on sea fishing. Mike is also regularly called upon by the BBC to appear in radio and TV programmes on fishing and fish behaviour.
Well, I guess anybody who knows that I live in Dorset will wonder why I'm down here in Avon trying to tell people about fishing the Bristol Channel. And the answer is that I'm not going to tell people about how to fish the Bristol Channel. I've got somebody who really knows his stuff, Nigel Ainscough, with me, and he's going to give me the lowdown on it. Here we are at the moment sitting on a salt marsh just above the mud flats between the two Severn bridges, and the idea is that when the tides come in a bit, Nigel's going to show us how to fish. But first of all, perhaps you can give me some idea what this fishing's like here. I've no idea at all, so you can start from scratch. I mean, to me it looks as though we've got an expanse of mud in front of us. How do I know where to fish?
Well, I think you've hit the problem on the head. If you actually look along the expanse of beach here, Mike, you will see that there aren't any really positive features.
Yes, that's for sure, yeah.
So, I mean, basically, if I was going to come and fish here, what I would first want to do is come and have a look at it before the tide comes in, to make sure that I haven't got any really bad snags out in front of me where I'm going to lose lots of terminal tackle. Yeah,
because there are a few snags. I mean, there's these tussocks of grass that have washed in off the edge, and they're pretty heavy clay attached to them. So if you get hung in one of them, it's gonna you're gonna lose some gear. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can always go and get it afterwards. The mud up to about 60 yards out isn't too bad, because I wouldn't want to go any further.
No, no,
not at all.
So, you know, you can fish anywhere, or are some places better than others?
Well, they run quite a few matches down here through the winter and summer, and for some reason, where we're actually sat now, it seems to throw up more fish than if we look up the beach a little bit. But why? No one knows. They tell me it's a little bit deeper here, but I'm not so sure when I actually look.
But I guess it's like people fishing anywhere, you know, because people catch fish in a spot, other people go there. So, you know, maybe you could fish anywhere. So it's worth trying almost anywhere along this stretch of beach, is it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nearly anywhere between the two bridges.
Yeah.
No problem at all.
And the second thing, really, as far as I'm concerned, the thing that strikes me about this place is mud. There's mud everywhere, and so I guess you've got to dress appropriately if you're going to come down. It's not much good coming down in your Sunday best and your suede shoes, is it, to fish on this stretch here?
Well, it isn't. You do need to dress appropriately. Quite obviously, if you had a spell of fine weather coinciding with neap tides, because, I mean, if you look out on this expanse of water, the tide's a long way off now, and we have big tides.
Yeah.
But you could come down because it would all be dry, but come down a week later and the water's all been over the top of the bank here, and it's an absolute mud bath.
Yeah. And what about, I suppose the interesting thing for people is what sort of fish can they expect to catch when they come in? Perhaps if you can tell me that. I mean, I know vaguely what it is.
I think that's why you're here, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It's supposed to be a good place for codling, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't really see why, to tell the truth, looking at it. It doesn't look like what I used to call cod ground when I lived in the northeast. That was all rocks and kelp, you know. This is just basically mud here, but they do catch a lot of cod here, I gather, don't they?
We probably have the best run of codling in the country, and has been consistently so. The reason why we've come up to Ast in the first place is that the fish seem to come here early in the season, from October up through to November, December time. The fish are here, and then they seem to drop back down through the channel again.
So now in early December, this is as good a time as any, is it? Right?
Oh yes.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Well, let's hope it is. And what sort of gear do you need to use? I mean, perhaps have a look at it later on, but do you need to cast a long way to fish here?
No, not at all. I mean, for the flounders, you can nearly catch them off the end of your rod tin.
Yeah.
With the codling, they can come anywhere in the tide.
Yeah.
At short range, at long range. it appears that, I don't mean to talk about match fishing, but if you look at the results, the lad that's been the most successful has been a chap that has managed to cast it as far as he can. So if we're talking around somewhere around the 100-yard mark, but the beauty of this venue is fish come at all ranges, and that's why we should. This is why we're
just
here.
as well for me, really. I don't think I could cast that far. And what about the baits? I mean, you're catching cod and flounders. I suppose you get eels here as well in the estuary, don't you? They'd be.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So, are there, some baits better than others then?
Well, I swear by lugworm.
Yeah.
This particular season, or while we're making the video, lugworm tipped off with black lug.
Yeah.
That seems to be the killer bait at the moment. But
you're not going to get lugworms here, I guess, are you? I mean, you've no chance of digging any on this stuff. It doesn't look like, I can't see a cast anywhere really from where we're sitting. So you've got to bring them with you if you come, have you?
Yeah, you do. I mean, you can either buy them from the local tackle shops or dig them around the Western Supermare area on the beaches down there.
Yeah, and if people are coming from further away, then they better bring the bait with them when they come. What about, have they got any alternatives? If they can't get lugworm, I mean, is it worth using other baits?
Yes, they can certainly use ragworm. I mean, the black lug that I mentioned can be bought frozen from most tackle shops, and you only need about 2 inches of that. So even if you're using ragworm, which is easier to obtain from the shops than lugworm, then come here. I mean, at one time it used to be ragworm and just fish for the flounders. Yeah. But things seem to change.
I mean, what about sort of what I'd call cod baits, other cod baits, things like peeler crab or squid or mussel? I mean, are they any good?
It's funny you should say that. I mean, I bought peeler crab, and peeler crab has its day. Yeah. But I wouldn't feel that I was going to miss out on a day's fishing if I didn't have peeler crab. Definitely.
That'll reassure a lot of people, I guess, because they're pretty expensive nowadays, these things, aren't they?
Well, they are. I mean, to me, lugworm is the bait.
The bait, right, okay. Have we got some today? Yes. Thank God. And I suppose the other thing that strikes me about the place is it's very convenient for anybody. You're not more than about 5 minutes from the road anywhere along here, are you? So you can come down the M4, the M5, and you can be fishing within 5 or 10 minutes, can't you?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, it's quite different to where I fish in Dorset. I guess the maximum tide we've got is about 2 metres, Nigel. So what's it like out here then? A bit more than that, I guess.
Yeah, much more than that. We have a range of tide at Avonmouth that goes from about 8.7 all the way up to 14.6 metres.
14 metres?
I mean, it's known as the second highest rise and fall of tide in the world.
Yeah, I know the big tides here. I think you get some bigger ones on the east coast of North America, but that's one of the few places that they do get bigger tides in.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's pretty dangerous, as you suggested earlier, to go out on this mud from the point of view of the tide. But what about the fishing? I mean, do you have to use grip leads to hold the bottom down here then?
Yes. I mean, grip leads are absolutely imperative.
Yeah.
I mean, not only for you to catch fish, but to stop you making yourself a nuisance with other anglers. Yeah. Because if you don't have a grip lead, the lead will just roll round in the tide.
So it's no good putting a sort of 2-ounce bomb on and hoping that it's going to hold bottom when the tide starts moving here then?
Well, it is if you jump on it at the very beginning.
So you can bury it in the mud, right? Yeah. Is that, I mean, just as a matter of interest, is that another problem? I mean, does it, when you cast, will it bury itself in the mud and you have problems getting it back out again? Or?
The only time that I've ever had problem with that is when I've cast when the water's still just making and I haven't got very much depth of water. Yeah. So what I have done is, totally to what I'm not prescribing, is to pull the lead back again so it doesn't get buried in. Right. But otherwise, after that, there isn't a problem at all. No, not a problem. Yeah.
Okay. And so, from that point of view, you're using a grip lead. You've got quite a strong run of tide. Yeah. I guess there's certain ways to fish it best. I mean, presume you don't just pitch it out there, stick it in the rest, and wait. I mean, are there any sort of tricks of the trade for fishing it?
To hold in a hard and heavy tide, one really needs to cast up the tide. So, for example, if we've got the tide running here from left to right, then you really do need to have to cast it up to the left at a 45-degree angle nearly,
Yeah.
and then to allow the lead to set in, you need to let a lot of line off your reel. So you're creating
so a nice bow in the line.
A nice bow like that, which gives a chance for the grip to go in.
And when you're fishing, I mean, are you fishing when the tide's running at its maximum? What state of tide's best for fishing? Can you fish any state of the tide, or top or the bottom, or what?
You can fish at any state of the tide, but to maximise your fish catching potential, then you should fish over the bottom of the tide.
Yeah.
That's to either side or over the top of the tide.
Right.
I mean, for example, we're at Aust here, so I'd fish an hour and a half each side of high water.
Right. This between the bridges, that's the optimum time as far as you're concerned. Is it the sort of top of the tide?
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And is that? I mean, presumably at high water, it's slack, is it? I mean, do you get a spell when you don't need a grip lead? Could you fish for what, half a minute with a sort of non-grip lead?
Obviously, it depends on what tide that you're fishing. I mean, the maximum tide that I'd want to come and fish up here is at 12.4, 12.5. Right. By today, it's about 11.5, and the water comes to top.
So you need a tide table if you're going to come and fish here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you certainly need to know whether it's a big spring or not, don't you? Because from what you're saying, that creates a problem.
Well, if you fish a really big spring, say here, then what's going to happen is you're going to be backed up onto the grass for 100 yards.
Yeah. So you need a good cast just to reach the water, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
You might be wondering at this point how cod manage to find any food in this murky water. Well, of course, if the water's clear, they have large and effective eyes. But in the gloom, they are able to feel and taste along the bottom with their chin barbel and pelvic fin rays. When they encounter edible material, they back up and swallow it. They may even cooperate to dig out buried food.
Show us a sort of
I'll show you.
leads and gear you use, could you?
Well, I've got a trace that I'll be using today.
Yeah.
And
Right.
first of all, I will say that this is what we call a breakaway grip.
Yeah.
Okay? This is homemade.
Yeah.
What happens is that these beads here anchor it into the grooves.
Yeah.
When a fish actually hits it, or when you're going to retrieve,
Breaks
they
away.
break
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Hence the name,
Yeah.
breakaway.
And what sort of pull does it need to do that then? Does it? I mean, you know, you say when a fish hits it, so that's not too much of a sort of yank to break them away, is it?
You feel yourself, Mike? You'd be surprised, I think, at the pressure on that.
I mean, people might think I'm stupid to think he's been fishing 40 odd years, you know, what else? I do know that grip leads exist. I've never in my life had to use one in the places I fish, so
See,
yeah. So it's not a lot, there's not a lot of, but that's plenty to hold it steady in the tide, is it?
absolutely.
Yeah. As long as you let a nice bowline out to get the lead pointing up tide, as it were. So.
Yeah.
And what about the trace? We might as well look at that one. See that? I mean, how do you make the bloody thing go back in there? There we go.
Right, the trace. I should really put fresh hook lengths on that.
Right.
But this is one that.
Yeah, but it gives me an idea.
Yeah. This is size 1 hooks.
Yeah.
I'd only use size 1 up here at Aust.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a 3-hook rig. I'm not saying that everyone needs to use a 3-hook.
So you could use one if you wanted.
You use one if you want to. I use a 3-hook rig though. Size 1 hooks, a strong hook.
Yeah.
Any of the manufacturers will make a heavier duty size 1 hook, and the reason is that we've got flounders out there as well. If we use 2 bigger hooks, then we miss out on.
Now, to me, they look too small for codling. I mean, you know, if I was going cod fishing, I wouldn't have thought of using a size 1. I don't think. Now, for flounders, perhaps I would. Although, I guess a big flounder would have no bother with it. How big are the flounders that you get here then?
They seem to run between 10 ounces to a pound, but obviously better ones do turn up. But we don't have big flounders. I'll give you an example. The Bristol Channel Federation have specimen sizes, and a flounder of 110, 112 will
So not I mean, that's a nice fish, but not a monster sort of thing. Yeah. So these hooks are probably. But do you miss codling on these? Then?
Don't seem to.
No.
Don't seem to. The codling at the moment are up to about £3. Obviously, I say that, and someone will say I've had a £10, but they've generally been at smaller.
No, you're not going to get a huge bait on there. I mean, you're not going to fill that with 10 lugworms or something, are you? That hook. So what do you do? Just one worm on it, basically, is it, at a time? 1 or 2 worms. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I can manage that. Whether I can reach any fish, that's another matter, right?
Well, you got chest waders on.
Yeah. I'd like to pretend that this is my tackle, but in fact, it's been loaned to me for the day very kindly by Dave Box of Veal's Mail Order. Nigel's brought his own gear along, but if you just perhaps give us an idea, Nigel, about what we've got and what it's supposed to do, because you're the man who knows about it. I haven't got a clue, really.
All right, thanks, Mike. Okay, first of all, we have a rod here that needs to be capable of chucking 5 to 6 ounces of lead plus bait.
Well, why do we need 5 or 6 ounces? Could we use less? Or?
You could use less.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly. I mean, on the smaller tides, there's no reason why a man couldn't come down here with his carp rod and 3 ounces of lead and fish.
But generally, 5 ounces is about the right sort of.
5 ounces is about right, especially if you're throwing the lead between 60 and 90 yards.
Yeah.
You need to have that weight plus the grips on there to hold in the tide.
Right. Okay.
Secondly, the reel that we're using is a high retrieve reel. It's loaded with 17-pound line plus a shot leader. The high retrieve reel will help in all parts of the channel because there's quite a bit of debris, rocks and boulders, and that enables you to be able to crank in your lead and bait much more quickly than the small little 6.5s and stuff like that.
I mean, I'm not used to any of this sort of stuff, but that's so that's obviously a pretty high quality reel, that one, isn't it? I mean, it's an Abu 7000.
7,500.
Yeah.
Very nice tool.
Yeah. And the rod?
The rod is what I'd call a middle of the range rod. It's made by Penn, and it's rated at throwing 4 to 8 ounces, but one normally finds that these rods work out at best around 5 1/4 ounces. Nice tip on there for showing bites and to set in the tide. And if we're lucky enough today and we get a codling, we'll see that tip spring back out.
I thought that was guaranteed, that.
I don't know who's been paying you, Mike.
Well, I suppose the important thing is to have a look at the business end of it, is it? I mean, again, it looks a fairly straightforward rig, but is there other sort of variations of rigs that we ought to use?
Well, what we're going to use today is I'm a great fan of using 3 hooks whenever possible.
Yeah.
Obviously over rough ground I can't
Why the
that.
3 hooks really? What's the...
Well, I think it probably comes from my days of being competitive on the match scene. It gives me 3 options really.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly allows you to present 3 different types of bait. I mean, for example, I could have lugworm on the top hook, ragworm on the middle hook, lugworm and crab, or rag and crab, or piece of fish, anything.
But would you normally, you'd just fish 3 lug, would you? I mean, if lug's a good bait here, you would fish 3 lug.
Well, I would,
yeah.
But quite obviously, fish like us don't always behave as you expect them to.
No.
So this gives me a chance to find out what the fish are feeding.
Right.
It gives me 3 chances to someone who's using a single hook to experiment with baits.
Yeah. So what sort of breaking strains the bits and pieces on that then? This is fairly hefty stuff. This yellow stuff, isn't it?
This is 80-pound Siglon that I'm using.
Right.
But you can use any line between 60 and 80 pound.
Yeah.
It's important that you use a very heavy strain of lime.
Yeah.
It's just for safety's sake. Really.
And this brightly coloured stuff doesn't make any difference. I guess they can't see it anywhere in the mucky water out here, can they?
I don't think it does, but everyone has their own.
Yeah.
Idiosyncrasies.
And what about the traces then? There.
The traces. This could be any mono.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a trout leader.
Yeah. Is that about 20-pound breaking strain? That is it?
This is 30 that I've got on there. The reason that you can see, I've got little sequins on here.
Yeah.
Got little rubber stops behind.
Yeah.
Now, when you have a rig that's clipped down and it's going to travel through the air like that, the bait's going to get forced up the snood.
Yeah.
So by that being adjustable,
sliding up. Yeah.
that's your bait stop, and it stops the worm from riding over the top.
Yeah. And I guess if you're putting a bit of welly into the cast, then that's a big advantage, isn't it? Stop the bait. Do you always use that rig then, Nigel? I mean, what happens if it doesn't work?
That can happen quite often.
Yeah.
If I feel that by using this rig that I've covered the medium to, say, getting towards long distance, and I'm not picking fish up, then what I'll swap over to is what I call a real distant rig, which is this one here.
Oh, right. That's what I've got on my gear then.
Well, they tell me you cast a long way, Mike.
Who the hell told you that? Some liar.
Pigeon carrier.
Yeah, right.
This rig works on the principle of an impact shield. We've got two hooks on here, and it works like this. You put your lugworm over here, 2 or 3, and then what we do is when the bait is on, we then wrap that round like that, so that is then held fixed in position.
Yeah.
That stops the bait from riding up the hook, and then it goes down and clips onto this impact shield. Just above the shield we have a crimp and we have a bead.
Yeah.
I've already adjusted it, but just to show you, that crimp moves.
All right.
Put that onto there.
Yeah.
Just the crimp
so
down.
You get a perfect sort of.
So it's a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Then clip it back on.
Oh, magic.
That way your bait is then released.
Yeah.
Out of the clip.
Every time, hopefully.
Every time. It's a fail-safe device.
Anybody who knows me will realise this isn't my tackle. Nigel comes fishing with all his traces ready-made and neatly organised in smart wallets. Our gear was set up well in advance, so it was just a question of waiting for the water to arrive. Impatient as ever, I couldn't wait and plodged out across the sloppy mud to meet the incoming tide.
I won't say beat that, Nigel, because I have a horrible feeling you can.
Well, from here.
It was impossible not to be impressed by Nigel's casting ability, let alone the neat efficiency of his gear. Having said that, and despite my limitations, it was not long before I had my first bite. The problem then was how to break the lead free without falling over in the mud.
How does one pull these things out, lad?
Just wind down onto it, Mike, unless you've got one of those tussocks.
Okay.
So you can't. That's why you can't strike, because you've got too much line stretch.
Yeah.
Don't know whether there's anything there.
Promising.
No.
On the top. There's no doubt about that. It's a fairly thin whiting. I wonder whether it had parasites, but it doesn't appear to have. Got a nice mouthful of teeth. Do you know that most of what these things eat is other whiting? 40% of the diet of big whiting is little whiting.
But we were after codling, and Nigel soon obliged.
The average run of size for this year, about £1.50 to £2.
Ah, very nice.
That took the crab.
Even at 75 to 100 yards range, a modest whiting or codling will give a good rattle on the rod tip.
If I stay here, and then we'll... That's a codling, I think, against the...
Not all of them. Most of them.
No, it's just a white... Oh, it's a flat. Is it? Oh, white. Wouldn't have thought that a fish that small would have rattled the tip so hard, would you?
Nigel was regularly picking up fish with his longer casting, so I swallowed my pride and let him chuck one out for me. And this brought immediate success.
Yeah.
I would have thought so.
Yeah. Grumbling about
Nice.
Eel, is it? No, it's a green eel. Yeah, better one though.
Better for what? You cast it out. You can take it off.
Take it off.
The whiting being caught on there,
Yeah.
may add as an attractor from the vibration,
Yeah.
but I like to think it was a nice juicy crab I put on there as
It
well.
might have been that, mightn't it?
The next early season venue is a few miles down the channel and is called Severn Beach. The fishing is from the sea wall, 1.5 hours either side of high water. The tide size needs to be between 11.5 and 12.5 metres, although locals will fish bigger or smaller tides. If you do not want to fish off the sea wall, the Avonmouth side, or the left-hand side of the wall facing out to sea, offers fishing off a shingle bar or mud and scurvy grass. The species to be caught are, in winter, flounders, cod, whiting and the occasional conger. In spring and summer, silver eels, flounders, bass, mainly school, although up to £10, and the occasional conger. Tackle and baits to use, the same as we've just used at Aust.
10 miles down Channel of Ost is the town of Portishead. Leave the M5 at junction 19 and follow the signs for the seafront. Park up by the boating lake and it's only a short walk to Battery Point.
Battery Point is perhaps the most famous mark on the Bristol Channel coast. Each year a few lucky anglers catch cod to £25 from this spot. Battery Point is very deep water and the tide runs very hard and strong here. Fishing can be had at all stages of the tide and the species caught can be thornbacks, codling, whiting, conger, sole, dogfish, and any other species is quite likely to turn up here. If standing on Battery Point and facing out to sea, to the right is an area known as the sandbanks. Care must be taken not to be cut off when fishing these banks. The banks expose on 12-metre or above tides, and fishing is into a deep gully. Rotten bottom rigs are advised. In winter, the species that are caught are codling and whiting, with the occasional sole. On smaller tides, between the sandbanks and Battery Point is a series of ledges, and on tides of 10.5 metres and below, this can be fished when the weather is calm. Across the bay is an area known as the Yacht School. This produces the same species that are caught off Battery Point to similar methods. The fishing here is a low water venue.
A short drive from Portishead is another popular venue, the seaside town of Clevedon. The Victorian pier is easily found by following the signs as you leave the M5 at junction 20. The pier itself was built in 1869 and provided the focus of fishing in Clevedon until 1970, when its partial collapse and subsequent closure on safety grounds saw the sad end to angling for generations of local anglers. After a 20-year campaign to raise funds, the pier is now open again, offering comfortable and sometimes very productive sport.
The pier once held the British Soul record, and to enable you to fish the pier, day tickets are available from the kiosk at the entrance to the pier. The way to fish the pier is to use a simple running ledger or pattern oyster. Long casting is not necessary, which is just as well because the tide runs very hard here. Sometimes one will need to use up to ½ pound of lead to hold in the tide, and if you're facing the tide, then uptiding will work with 5 or 6 ounces of breakaway lead. Within sight of the pier is Lady Bay, another popular mark. Follow the coast road in the Portishead direction and turn left by the Portishead sign into Bay Road and park up as far down Bay Road as you can. Then take the coastal footpath in the Portishead direction until the ledges become obvious where you can fish from. Lady Bay, or also known as St Mary's, can be fished at all stages of the tide, although 1 hour up and 3 hours down is favourite, or 3 hours down to low water and 1 hour up. Rigs to be used are clip-down pattern oyster at range. The bottom is mixed and the species caught are cod, codling, whiting, dogfish, conger, flounder, dabs, silver eels and sole. This is an extremely popular mark, and at times anglers stand shoulder to shoulder. If you can't find a place to fish immediately, follow the coastal path in the Portishead direction for maybe up to a mile or more, but there are ledges all the way along and a fishing spot will become available.
Below Clevedon is the venue known as Sand Point. This mark is best reached by leaving the motorway at junction 21, the Weston-super-Mare exit, and follow the signs for Kew Stoke and Sand Point. The road narrows to a lane, but the signs are numerous, so you shouldn't get lost.
You got one? I think more big crab. I'm gonna have to go down here, Mike.
It's a bit heavier, Mike.
Huh?
It's a bit heavier.
Yeah. The only trouble is it's coming over this bloody rock down there, and because my line is in the way here, you know? Nice little fish of about 3.5 pounds. Taken London squid bait there on the bottom hook.
Very nice.
Okay.
Yeah, excellent.
Yep.
Right, I've just had a bite of my right hand rod. It's what we call a breakout. I've got line all over the rocks at the moment, so I've got to wind down quite quickly to catch up. Yes. I think another small cod. It's on light again now. Whatever it is, it's not that big. Have some rocks out in front of me. I must keep this fish moving. In some rocks now. It's not snagging. Well, let the line off. I hope the fish will pull it out. This is how beautifully done for me. Nice one, Nigel. Another run-of-the-mill fish of around 2.5 to 3 pounds.
Well, a bit different this then, Nigel, where we were yesterday, isn't it? How far down the coast are we from the place we went yesterday?
I think as the crow flies, about 10 miles, Mike.
Right. And instead of all that horrible squelchy mud, at least we've got some firm rock to stand on. What do they call this place again?
This is Sand Point.
Sand Point, yeah. And it's obviously pretty popular, judging from the number of people that are fishing down here, isn't it?
Yeah, very popular this time of the year. Very good fishing. Wow.
Yeah, and what sort of fish are you expecting to catch here? Same sort of things as
Cod,
cod, yeah.
small cod. But having said that, it will throw up big thornback. It will throw up bass. And as we saw earlier, there was an angler up there still had a late season conger as well.
yeah. So a good variety of fish here again.
Plus the whiting.
Well, I mean, already we've had 3 small codling and a few whiting, haven't we? So the same sort of spectrum of fish as we had at the other place, plus a few big ones of other sorts, probably. I mean, I guess we wouldn't get so many thornbacks or conger up at the other spot we were at, would we?
It's very rare. I don't understand why we don't get thornback up there, because some of the ground up there is very suitable.
Yeah.
But whether people don't fish for them or they just don't go up there, I really wouldn't like to say. Certainly down here, there's a lot of thornbacks caught.
Now, I suppose this place, one of the difficulties is obviously getting here. We have to say a bit more about that to people, I suppose, about how they're going to get here if you want to come and fish. And when you've got it, it looks incredibly snaggy, doesn't it? I mean, the stuff you're on, if you're fishing on this stuff, you're going to be losing tackle every cast, but it's not as bad as that when you cast out.
Oh, no.
It's not.
No, I mean, to answer the ground, I mean, we fish at low water.
Yeah.
We fish about 2 hours either side of low water. The particular mark we're stood out of on now is the knuckles, but anywhere along the area they call Sand Point, from the very point itself, going down that way, which is Middle Hope Bay, which is beyond where you can see these anglers on the horizon.
Yeah.
All the way through there, you can fish, and it'll produce the same type of fishing.
So you've got
now.
miles of fishing basically along here.
We have.
Yeah.
We have indeed. The first thing I'd like to say is that I am not using a 3-hook rig today. I am using the adjustable pennel rig, or the rig as we called the distance rig yesterday. The other thing that you must remember on working on ground like this is that it blunts your hooks very quickly. And if you just have a small little diamond file and just touch the edge of the hook up, you can always tell if it's sharp on the back of your thumb now by just putting it in like that. If it catches, it's got a really nice sharp point on it. I'll show you how to bait up what I call a lug and squid parcel. And what we do is put the lugworm onto the hook first of all like this, Lots of people seem to think that you need to have huge baits for cod. Well, that might be so, but we seem to have a lot of success with our cod fishing with using 2 or 3 lugworm on the hook. The other reason for using the lug parcel is we've been troubled by crab today, and crab just love lug and they just love squid. But by protecting your lugworm, as I'm going to show you in a minute, with the squid, it does allow your bait to be out there just that little bit longer. Once again, 2 lugworm onto the hook. That is then wrapped round the top hook, which is just, the line is just placed through the eye and slides freely on there. Then what I do is I prefer to get a piece of squid, put it on through the bottom hook like that, and allow it to come back over the top, and then I hold it in position, covering all the lugworm up all the way up to the next hook. I then get some knitting elastic and start to bind it round. The reason we use knitting elastic is because you don't have to tie it off. It's so fine, it just binds nice and neatly into whatever you're doing, whether it be crab, squid as I'm doing now. Make sure that you don't mask your hook point. If it starts to go round, pull it round, ensuring the hook point is free. There we have a lug and squid parcel, with most of the lugworm protected by the squid. It's also nice and streamlined, so it also casts well. This in particular has proved over the years to be a very successful bait for thornback, but the cod love it as well. Also, when fishing on marks like this, where we're fishing for short periods, 3.5 to 4 hours, we double pat. And I have another rig laid up on this rest, so if I had a fish and I reeled a fish in, or even if I was going to change the bait, I can just reel it straight in, unclip it, because on the end of my shot leader there's a number 6 mustard split link, so I can just clip that open, put it through the swivel, and I'm away, and I'm fishing all the time. You must keep your baits in the water at all occasions, otherwise if you're baiting up for 5 or 10 minutes after every cast, you're losing an awful lot of time.
Nigel mentioned earlier that he prefers to use smaller baits. It's a known fact that in very cold water, cod are not capable of opening their mouths as wide as this, and can only eat small food items.
Western town beaches can be fished with light gear, especially in summer, ideal for the holiday angler who only wants to bring a feeder rod. Short casting for school bass, flounder and silver eels.
At the far end of Western Bay, across the River Axe at Uphill, is the massive limestone promontory known as Breen Down. From junction 22 of the M5, take the B3140 to Burnham-on-Sea. Bait and tackle can be bought even on Sundays from Thyres at nearby Highbridge. If you head for Barrow and carry on past the caravan sites of Breen, park at the end of the road. 200 zigzag steps then lead you up to the top of the down.
It's got to be said that this isn't a climb for the faint-hearted, but once at the top, the views across the Somerset levels and Barrow Sands below are quite spectacular. Small lug can be dug from the muddy sands all along the beach, but it is probably better to bring your own bait with you. From the top of the steps across the greensward is a single track road that leads out to the abandoned fort at the point. Leaving the road and following the many paths down on the western side will bring you to many high or low water marks, which during autumn and winter produce conger, cod and codling. At the end of the down, in front of the fort, is an area known as the Howe Rocks. The tide races through here, and mainly in summer, on spring tides, very large bass have been caught. The method to use is a rotten bottom on a 30-pound line, cast into a gully using either a large squid or large peeler baits. But be warned, you can easily get cut off here as the gullies fill behind you at an alarming rate. I've just realised I've left a box of squid in the fridge. Got any really big beats with you, Dave? No, I haven't got any really big beats. Oh. Oh. Why not? Just using... No, it's alright, I'll just use my brains, I'll just squash the loop up.
While Dave and I set up our gear and huddled out of the freezing gale, Nigel was already into his first codling on a lug and crab cocktail.
Bit hairy, but worth it in the end. Very slippery. Do you know, I've only just cast that out. Considering I missed a bite on the other rod. Yeah. Here we are. About 3.5 pounds. It's taking on the top up. I'm still getting my breath back.
Nigel had said earlier that when fish start to feed, they often came in quick succession. As usual, he was not far wrong.
Well, that's a bit better than Nigel, isn't it? Hey, they're not too bad. That's a nice fish, that second one, yeah?
That's better. That's much more the stamp of fish
That you would like to catch on.
Oh,
Yeah.
most definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not complaining with the smaller size,
no.
but this seems to be in the size that we've caught off the shore all the way through this winter.
Yeah.
Whereas I know when in the uptiding boats or in the conventional boats, they've been catching 6 to 10 pound grass fish. Goodness knows why they haven't come inshore this year, or certainly haven't in any numbers.
I guess these, I mean, they're only 2 or 3 years old at the most, these cod, you know, they grow very quickly, these things, so they're only, still only young fish, these. But what they call this place? Breen Down, is it this place we're on today?
Yeah, we're on Breen Down.
We're fishing more or less off the top of the cliffs today, aren't we? I mean, we're a bit higher up than we've been in the past, which is nice for me. It's not quite as muddy as the other place we've been. But what's it like? What's the ground like out in front of us there?
What we have out in front of us, we're in Western Bay. We've got Western Supermare to the right of me there.
I can just see it across the bay there.
Just across the bay there. Yeah. And what we're fishing here is onto sand and mud. If you were to be here at low tide and to walk out, you'd be able to actually walk out onto the sand or sandy, gritty mud.
Yeah.
What we're doing at the moment now is we're not casting a long way. We're using conventional flowing lead and bait. And what's happening is the tide's picking the lead up. We're not using grip leads either today.
No. So just sort of a running lead.
A running lead.
What is it? Are they about 4 ounces? We've got on, are they?
Well, today, as you can probably see by the, it's really quite rough. We've got 5 ounces today, but you can use less. And what happens is the tide always runs right to left here. No matter what state of the tide, it's running right to left, and your lead gets swept round into where the sand joins the rocks, and that's where the fish appear to run. And this is where both of these fish have come from today.
Now today it's difficult casting, really. I mean, we're having to really force it to get it anywhere against this wind. Even you aren't sort of casting a long way today, but I guess under sort of less windy conditions, there'd be no problem even me getting the bait out to where the fish are today. I mean, it's easy reach for anybody. I mean, an overhead lob will put the bait where the fish are, won't it?
That's right, Mike. That's right. 40 yards, no more. I mean, if you cast any further, you've just got more line that's going to get swept round in the current, and you've more chance of then it running across all the rocks and getting it snagged and frayed, etc.
And the baits are the same ones we used in the other places in the Bristol Channel. We've been crab, lugworm, squid. They're all liable to catch fish.
They're all liable to catch fish.
But crab and lugworm are still the favourites, are they?
Well, they are for me.
Yeah.
Having said that, I'd be quite happy to come here and use the squid parcel that I was using if I couldn't get hold of crab. No, it's very effective. There's some sensational catches taken off here. I haven't seen them, but I do know
they do catch them, yeah.
Some really good bites.
And what about the state of the tide? I mean, what's the best conditions to fish it, really?
For myself, I like to fish 2 hours of high water, either side of high water.
And a big tide or a little tide?
Today we're on a smallish tide, which isn't ideal, because as you've seen, the leads haven't moved until after the top of the tide. But anything up to a 13 metre and table mouth tide, the bigger the tide, the better.
The bigger the better, yeah. But I mean, even on a tide like this, you're still catching 1 or 2 fish, so it's not. It's never hopeless, obviously.
No. But what you don't have, and I think although this is your first time on here, Mike, is you can see that when we first arrived, you could see the bottom.
Right.
And we haven't the depth. Quite obviously, the fish. It seems to fish better when they've got more depth.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, where you've got rocks and where you've got sand, there's eddies and stuff created, and that's where the food gets washed off, and all kinds of things.
Now, I guess just for anybody who's not been here, it's pretty exposed, is this place, isn't it? We're sitting behind a bush at the minute to try and keep out the wind, just so we can actually hear what we're saying. But out there, it's about 4'7" from, feels like it's come from Siberia, and the sea's pretty rough. But you can find a reasonable amount of shelter to fish. I mean, as long as you're well wrapped up. It's the end of January now, so
Yes.
it's never going to be any colder, I guess, than this.
Forgive me if I keep looking down there, I keep looking at the other rod.
I see that. I thought you had a
hopeful.
bite before.
Well, so did I.
Yeah, yeah, well, perhaps you have, yeah. So, anyway, if you catch a third one, I think that'll be, I'll have to pack in, because I think that's probably enough for me. I can't take any more after that. Well, I think that's fantastic. Well, despite the horrible weather, thanks very much, Nigel. I think it's been fantastic, these trips down to Bristol Channel. You showed me how to catch the fish anyway, that's for sure. Hopefully you'll be able to come down into Dorset sometime and show me how to catch them down there as well. I suppose that'd be the ideal. The weather should be a bit better than it's been in the Bristol Channel, shouldn't it?
I shall really look forward to that, I think. I mean, I know we're slinging heavy loads around here, but I really like light line fishing as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I've read your articles, I've seen the pictures. I'm looking forward to coming.
Oh, well, maybe. But whether we'll catch as much as we've done here, I don't know. I think this has been damn good fishing, really. And anybody who wants to catch codling in the winter, like you said, I think on the first morning we were out, you couldn't do better than this, could you?
No, you can't. I would go as far as to say you get the best cod fishing
Fantastic.
here.